Hello everyone. In today's video I'm going to show you how to install the FortiGate Firewall on the ESXi host. Before I begin, please support my channel by subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you'll be notified when I release more videos. So I'm going to open my ESXi host. I'm also going to open FortiGate's website, which is support.fortinet.com. First thing I'm going to do, which is actually very important when you're trying to download ESXi version of FortiGate, is to go to register from FortiGate website, put in your email address and click on register. I'm going to go to the registration process with you. So I'm going to put my email address here and click on register. Enter the captcha code. Get verification code. That will send you a verification code to your email. Once you receive the verification code in your email, you put the verification code here. Okay, I got the email of the code 675847. This code is definitely going to be different from the code you will get from your own email. So click on register, enter the password you want to use. This password is what you're going to be using to log in to FortiCloud, which is where you're going to be downloading the software needed to install the ESXi version of the FortiGate Firewall on your ESXi host. You're going to enter your name, your last name, and all the details that are needed here. I'm going to enter this, and then I'm going to click on Submit. You agree to the terms and condition, and click Register. Click Complete. Now you can log in with the email that you provided and the password that you entered earlier. Enter the password and click Login. So once you log in, you're going to see the welcome message. It will tell you how many products you've registered. One thing that Fortinet is doing right now is that for a trial version, they are only allowing you to use one email per device, per registered device. But if you have the license, you could actually use multiple devices. But since we're going to use the trial version, you basically just use one email. Then we can actually register the products and go from there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to go to support here, and we're going to download the VM images. Now, when you click on VM images, that will bring you over to Fortinet VM deployment images. Since the product we're trying to download is a FortiGate firewall, so you choose FortiGate, and then it would ask you what platform do you want to install it. Of course, we're installing on a VM ESXi host, so you click on VM ESXi, it's going to give you all the version. This is the latest version we currently have, which is version 7.2.4 as at the time of this recording. So here you can see we have a new deployment for FortiOS, and this is actually the file here. The size of the file is 85 meg. There's an upgrade from previous version if you have a previous version of VM, and then this is a 7.2. There's actually an upgrade, and this is also a new deployment for VM. And this is the file name here, and this is actually a zip file. Which is as compared to this one, which is OUT. This is actually also a .out.ovf.zip file. So this is the size of the file. So I'm going to be downloading this one with the FGT. You can download this, but I prefer to download this. So I'm just going to download this, and once the download is done, so currently it's currently downloading. Once the download is done, I'm going to open it. I'm going to show you what to do when with the kind of ESXi version that you have. So this is the file that came in a zip file. You can see we have the data drive, we have different OVF file. There's HW13 OVF, HW15 OVF, there's a NXT, NSXT.ovf, there's a VM64 OVF, there's a VAPP.ovf. These different versions actually work with different EXI version. That's why you need to actually read the text file, the README text file that comes with it. The README text file that comes with it will tell you um, what EXI version you have. So if you have EXI 7.0 or higher, you're going to be using the VM64, the OV, which is going to be this one up here. If you have version 6.5 of the EXI version, you're going to be using 13. If you have version 6.7 U2 or later version, you're going to be using HW15. I'm going to log into my EXI host, and I'm going to show you how the version, and then we're going to agree on which version is actually appropriate to actually use in this scenario. I'm going to pause. So now that I've logged into my EXI version, you can see I'm using version 6.7. You can actually find your version here under hosts. I'm using version 6.7, and I'm using the U3, which is update 3. Um, that's the current version of my EXI host. So if we look through the text file again, what you're going to see is I'm using version 6.7, and this one says U2 plus, which is from update 2 plus. So this would work. So I'm basically going to be downloading this particular file. Um, if you look down here, you could see 6.7 would also as well work with this particular one. But in this case, I'm only going to be using this hw15.ovf file. So which is going to be this. So I'm going to extract all the files I need into a folder. I'm going to select that, select the data drive, and then select the virtual drive as well. This are the three files I need. I do not need these other ones here because basically this is all I need. This, the HW15, and this one. The other ones are not applicable for my installation. I'm going to extract this. I'm going to create a folder. Create a folder for it anywhere you want it to be. So I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to name the folder any name you want to name it. FortiGate 7.2.4. That's the version. And I'm going to extract the file into that folder. So as you can see, these are the three files which I've extracted. The total size of this data is about 87.4. It's not so big. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a VM on my ESXi host. To do that, I'm going to come to virtual machine, create register VM. This time around, I'm actually going to be deploying using OVF file. If you remember that the downloaded file that I have is actually a .ovf file. You remember in the README file, you have .ovf. So I'm going to be downloading. Sorry, I am going to be deploying the virtual machine from OVF file. I'm going to click next. I'm going to click here and then drop every file that I have down as an extracted. And then I'm going to call this my FGT. You can call it anywhere, any name. You can give it any name you want to call it. You can as well put the version if you want. It's not really important. It depends on what you want. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to select my data store. That's currently what I currently have. I'm going to select that. I'm going to accept the license agreement by clicking on I agree, and then I'm going to click next. Now here you're going to select the network interfaces. In this case here, you notice it gave me about 10 network options. In my case here, I actually basically need maybe two. So I'm going to use the internet link, and I'm actually going to use let's see, yeah, I'm going to use this one. um, I can actually add one more if I want, but it's not really important, so I'm just going to add this. I'm actually going to clean that up later, so I can leave this the way they are. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to click next, and then here I'm going to deploy this by clicking on finish. So this is basically the summary page, and I'm going to click on finish, and then you can see that this is basically deploying your file. It will tell you the status. So you can see I have two already successful. The third one is currently importing of the app, and then once everything okay, now there are 4 steps. It says it's even ready. So this is my firewall here. This is my FGT, so I can click on it, and then here you can see it's running. Now, one thing that is very, very important is that the first time this runs is basically actually going to reboot again, and then we're going to be required to um, log in, and I'm going to show you other things that are necessary to do with the FortiGate firewall. So at this time currently is basically partitioning and formatting the drives, and once it's done with that, it's going to reboot. Now you can see system is going down, which is basically its way of saying I'm rebooting. So please stand by while it reboots. So now you can see it's rebooting. System is starting. Now I have a serial number. Every VM that you create will give you a serial number. So this is my serial number, and you can see I have the login page. Now, when you log in, your default username is basically admin, and there's no password. It's going to force you to change the password. This is very, very important. It's going to force you to change the password. So I'm going to change the password here. So when next I log in, I no longer will be logging in with a blank password. So if I exit this now, I type in my username admin. Now if I press enter, it's going to tell me I need to put in the right password. So I need to type in the right password, which is the password I just typed in. So now, as you can see, I am already in, and we're going to configure this device mostly using the GUI, which is the web interface. I'm going to show you what to do next. I'm going to show you how to get the IP addresses that your device is by default. If you're using a FortiGate hardware device, is probably going to come up with 192.168.1.99 as the default IP. I'm going to show you how to get the IP address using the CLI command. We're going to open the web browser together, and then we're going to go through the configuration and how to set up your FortiGates uh, in your home environment on an ESXi host. So I'm going to log in again. Oh, sorry. I thought I was already logged out. I'm still in. So what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm going to run this command, config system interface. The reason why I'm running this command is because by default, um, the FortiGate actually comes with an IP address. Also, because when I was setting this up, I actually have um, different network adapters. I have the internet adapter. I have my virtual adapters for my VLANs and everything. So I basically have about 4 working adapters here. So some of these or one of these actually would have actually assigned IP address to this. So I can actually check that by clicking edit and using the question mark. And as you can see here on port 1, you can see it's a DHCP and I currently have an IP address 172.170.100.200 as in 210. So that's actually the address I'm actually going to use to actually open the web interface. Don't forget when you put a date and then you use your question mark, that will give you this one. So this tells me um, port 1 is actually already configured. So I can actually run another command here. Let me exit this out. Oh, sorry, actually it's end. Now I can actually run this command as show system interface. Um, port 1, since I know that's actually the port. If I don't want to use port 1, that would be very specific. If I don't want to use port 1, I could actually just say show system interface. Now, this will tell you all the ports. As you can see here, port 1, if you look very well, you'll see that port 1 have sets mode DHCP, set allow ping, HTTPS, SSH, HTTP, FGFM. So the HTTPS is actually the what's it called? Is actually allowed, which is actually going to allow us to open this page using HTTPS colon 172.170.100.2. I believe it's 210. So I can actually check that again. Remember to check, you just say config system interface and then edit and then with the question mark that tells you okay, that's the address 172.170.100.210. So 172.100.210, enter. Now because of course we do not have any valid certificates, it's actually going to tell us, give us this connection is not being secured and everything. You could actually import certificates. That's another um, um, topic entirely. So I'm going to click on advanced here, and then I'm going to click proceed to that address on save. I'm going to log in with the username, which is admin, and the password I created earlier on the CLI when I was opening my device for the first time. I'm going to click login. So this is then going to ask me to register my device. Now I'm going to use the evaluation license at this point. Remember, I created an email address. Sorry, I created an account using my email address, and I have a password as well. And if you remember, when we logged in the first time, we noticed that what's it called? There was no registered assets, or there was no registered product. So we're going to register this by putting in the username there and then typing in the password we created on the FortiCloud. We're not a government user, so this is basically for training purposes. So I'm going to click on OK. But before I click OK, I need to say this. This is very important. One thing you need to note is that it's not going to work with more than one CPU and it's not going to work with more than 2 gig of memory. So because this is a trial version, you can't increase this. One other thing is that there is a maximum of 3 interfaces. If you remember in my ESXi also earlier, I had 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically, one of this is not going to work. So it's going to work with 1, 2, 3. So one of this is not going to work because it's only going to work with the maximum of 3 interfaces. And actually, also, I'm not going to have any 40K support, and it's also going to support low encryption operation only. So this is basically the free or the evaluation license. This is full, as in this is free, but there's some limitations as well to it. So the maximum of 3 interfaces, firewall and route each. So maximum of 3 interface, maximum of 3 firewall policies and routes. So that's the limitation of using an evaluation product. However, that should not deter you from using FortiGates in your home environment. So I'm going to click on OK, which will register my device, and then that will log in once this is fully registered. currently, as you can see, it's rebooting. I can actually see here, you will see this the system is going down now. So it's basically shutting down, and then they say please stand by while we reboot, and then it's rebooting. So you notice all I just did was just to log in, and it's rebooting here. And as it's rebooting here, you can see the same thing is actually happening on the CLI. So you could actually be watching on the CLI, or you could be watching it on the GUI. Whichever interface. Most people configure everything they want to configure on the CLI, but some people prefer the GUI for the configuration because it's a lot easier to configure on the GUI as compared to using the CLI. Whichever one, it's relatively easy. There are certain things you still will need to use the CLI for that you can't basically do on the GUI. Um, so now, as you can see, it's ready. So it's very, very fast, despite the fact that it has a limitation of that 2 gig RAM and it has one CPU. So we're still not limited to what we can do. So here at this point, I'm going to log in back. And the next thing we're going to do is to set this up. So you set it up with an host name. You could do a firmware version upgrade, but because we downloaded the recent version, we don't need to do that. That's why you can see that it's checked. And we don't need to change the password. That's why you see that also is checked. So what we need to do is to specify the host name and do a dash possible. I can also skip this, but let's go through this process. We're going to set up the name. I can call this FGT dash home lab 06, and then click OK. That's going to be the name. And now I do like to use a comprehensive dashboard. Um, you could use the optimal one, you could use a comprehensive one. Whichever one works for you, that's fine. I like to use a comprehensive one because I have all the features already enabled. You could actually watch some of the videos that shows you some of the changes that were made to the version 7.2. I remember we're using version 7.2.4. So there's 7.2.3, there's 7.2.4. So at this point here, all these features here are all enabled by default because we use a comprehensive dashboard. So I don't have to be adding all these features on the from system. I don't have to be turning this on. They're already on by default, so I really don't have to worry much about it. Next thing you're going to do when you log into your FortiGate is you need to configure your interfaces. Remember, it was because we were able to obtain an IP address on the port 1, which is this particular one here. That is why we're able to um, access this using the GUI house. We would have configured everything we want to do on the CLI before we can actually do that on the GUI because the interface is already configured with DHCP, so I can actually obtain an IP address and then go from there. If not, I have to do something like this. Log in here, then say config system interface edit port 1, sorry, port 1, then you set mode. If you're doing a static IP, you say set mode static, and then you begin to set all, as in then you do set allow access ping, all those kind of things, and then you do set um, IP and so on like that, whatever command that it's required. So I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to use everything I want to do. I'm going to do it on the GUI. I don't want to do the CLI because we can look at the CLI command in a different video, but this is just the basic way to set up your FortiGate without having to use a CLI. So here, the first thing I want to do is, because this was gotten using DHCP, I want to make sure that this device is assigned this IP permanently. So I'm going to double click on this port on port 1. Now you can define the role. Basically, that's actually my WAN interface. I know that because this IP is actually coming from my WAN interface. So you could name this whatever name of your internet is. You could say Xfinity, Comcast, AT&T. So I'm just going to name this internet. Or I'm just going to say ISP. Okay, now here, notice that I got this IP address using DHCP. This is the IP address I got. It's a class C. This is this. I'm just going to choose manual, and the IP still remains. Remember, the next thing is this is the DNS I got. I can actually change the DNS as well. So in this case here, I'm just going to click on this, and that's actually what I have. Notice HTTPS. You remember when I showed you that earlier, HTTPS is on. FGM access, HTTP, SSH, and ping is on as well. Anyone you want to turn on here that is relevant to you can turn them on. So the next thing I'm going to do here is ensure that this status is enabled. If this is disabled, we'll lose access basically to this interface. So I'm going to leave this the way. All I just did basically here was just to set the IP address to manual so that that doesn't really change anymore. So I'm going to click on OK. The next thing I'm going to do is if you want to change the DNS, you can come here to change the DNS. And we're going to look at that again later. But next I'm going to do is to set my LAN IP. I'm going to use port 2 for my LAN. And then I'm going to change the role to LAN. Then you could name this LAN if you want to. You could just leave the alias the way it is. So I'm going to configure this to have a LAN IP of 192.168.183. Let's use 254 for um, my what's it called? My FortiGate device. I'm going to say /24. If you don't want to use /24, you could just say /255.255.255.0, whichever one you have to do. Both of them will still work, so whichever one, I can just say /24. This would actually create this IP address. Notice I'm using manual. And so this is also going to create the objects. And when you come here to policy object, you will see under addresses, this address will be added there as well. If you want to be able to access this address using the web interface, you will need to enable this. I'm not going to enable it for now. I'm going to show you that at this point you can't ping it, you can't do anything. So if you don't enable ping, if you don't enable HTTPS, you can access it using the web browser. So I'm going to leave it the way it is at this point here. Now, if you want to set up the DHCP server, you check this one and then you turn on the DHCP server information and then you enable the interface and click on OK. But what I would advise is that because it's a LAN interface, it's very, very good to actually have it accessible over LAN as compared to having it accessible over WAN. So this in my port 1, I should have disabled that, but because I'm still doing my configuration, it's better to to enable it here first before you go disable it there. So I'm going to leave this enabled, and if you want to be able to SSH into it, you turn that on. You should be able to ping that interface at least, and then if you want to add this to some monitoring software like PRTG, like Orvic, you need to turn on the SNMP. Um, then there are other things that you can as well do. There's FortiManager access and so on like that. I'm going to leave it the way this is. The next thing I'm going to do is to enable DHCP server. Now this is very, very important. So if you want to create two different scope of DHCP, let's say you want to create two different range. Like let's say my IP should begin from 50 and it should stop at let's say 56, and then I want to have another IP. Let me close this. I want to have another IP starting from, let's say 75, and then I want to stop at 100. So what I'm basically saying is that any address between 1 to 49 will not be assigned via the DHCP server, and any address from 57 down to 74 will also not be assigned. Those IP could be given to your servers. If you want to set it that way, that's fine. If not, you could just close this and just say, okay, I want to give it from maybe 1 to, let's say, 253. You can as well do that because this is 254, so it's still going to work as well. Well, let's just break it down into two. So maybe we'll create three different IP subnets. I'm going to say 50 to, let's say, 90. Let's say 99. And then here we have, let's say, 150. Let's say to 199. And then this one we have, um, last one I want to create will be 250. Don't forget, this cannot get to 254 because 254 is already assigned here. So this would not go more than 253. So that will be the last available address. So this is my net mask here, which is the /24. If you want to use a different DNS from what this device is configured as, you could as well specify that DNS here. So let's use Google DNS. This might not be applicable to you. You might want to use your internal DNS or whatever, or maybe your open DNS, whichever DNS that you want to use. That's also applicable. So let's say I want to use open DNS. I could actually just add open DNS here. You can as well add the .dns server, but I'm just going to leave it at two DNS, primary and secondary DNS. That's fine, that's good enough for me. This list period, this is very high. I always like to use 1 day, so 86400 seconds is basically 24 hours. So here, everything looks good. If you click on the advanced, this is other things that you can actually do when you're referring to IPsec, DCP relay, but we don't need to do anything about it. So you're setting up the NTP server and so on like that. I don't need to do anything there. Under security mode, you can create a captive portal. This is mostly used to when you want people to log in, blah blah blah. When it will show them a login page where they put all those kind of things, but I don't need that as well. What I'm going to ensure is this interface is enabled, and then I'm going to click OK. Now, don't forget, if I put this IP address in the browser with HTTPS at this point, it's not going to open. But when I click OK, because this HTTPS is enabled, I'm going to disable HTTPS just to show you. I'm going to click OK. And then, as you can see, the interface is actually configured. This is the IP address of the interface. If I open browser, notice this. I really can't open the interface, as in I can't open the page. But if I enable HTTPS, that will allow the page that will allow the page to be accessible via HTTPS. But also remember that it's very important that you know that you have to be in the same IP subnet. So which means that your computer have to be in the same IP subnet as this, or have a routing enabled that will be able to route traffic over to this particular IP address for you to be able to open this. So if you're say experiencing this, what that's basically telling you is that your PC or your device is currently not in the same IP address range as this, so you cannot open because you're not in the same network. But this network is currently different from my LAN network. Now, before I open that, let me just finish all the configuration I want to do here. I've already enabled HTTPS, so I don't really have anything to worry about. So what I want to do next, which is very, very important, is to come to static route here. This is very, very important. You need to be able to allow this firewall access to the internet. Let me show you something. If I come here, I say ping google.com. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Exec ping google.com. Notice that nothing is actually showing because I have no way to actually route all my packets to the internet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to create a static route. I'm going to say if you're going to go anywhere, I want you to go anywhere using my default gateway, which is this. This is my default gateway, and I want you to go through the ISP interface. My AD is basically my administrative distance. If you have multiple static routes, the lower AD is preferred over the higher AD. So this number can go up and down, whichever number you want to create. But at this point, it's not important. So I'm just going to make sure that it's enabled. Click OK. Now I have a static route that goes anywhere. 0.0.0.0/0 means any. So if I go back to my what's it called, to my CLI, and then I do that, notice what is happening. Now I can actually ping. So if I close this, let me ping it again. You can see I can ping. If I close this and then I remove, let's remove this. So let's just disable. Let's disable that. That's good. Instead of removing and doing it again, we disable that and let's ping it again. Notice I can't ping it because without a static route, this firewall cannot get to the internet. So it's very important that this firewall gets to the internet. So now I'm going to enable this back. And so that gives access of this firewall to the internet. So now I can actually um, resolve the IP as that name to IP address, and then that's actually pinging. The next important thing you need to do. Currently, there is a WAN access for this device, but there is no LAN access. So any device in your LAN can still not access the internet. So what I'm going to do is to create policy. This is the final step in all the process. So this is for currently everything has an implicit deny all. So what this means is that by default, all traffic coming from anywhere in your network, going anywhere is being denied. Going through any ports, all of them are being denied. So all traffic from your LAN, if you're trying to go out through the firewall, they will be dropped. Nothing is going to come out from a firewall to the internet because this basically denies everything implicit, invisible. So denying, so it's just there by default. So I'm going to create a firewall rule that allow my LAN to go to the internet. So here I'm going to say my source is my LAN. Remember, my LAN is my port 2. As you can see, the IP address is showing here. That's my LAN, not port 3. In this case, I've not said anything on port 3. It's port 2. That's my LAN. The reason why I like to put alias is that you can actually see what the name are. So let's go back there, quickly create an alias for port 2. So I'm going to name this LAN and then click OK. And go back to policy and objects, and then a firewall rule, create a new rule, and then I'm going to say LAN to ISP. Now, notice this already changed now because I have an alias. So now I have my LAN. So my incoming is my LAN. And where is it going? It's going to my WAN. So LAN to WAN. So source is all, destination is all. It means any source, any destination, and then services using all ports. Whatever kind of ports it's using, then I make sure that NAT is turned on. Very, very important that NAT is turned on. Now you have some security profiles you could turn on for antivirus. By default, it's using the default one, but I'm not going to use this for now. I'm going to disable this. I'm just going to leave this as a default and ensure that this policy is enabled. So once you click on this, okay, what happened is that it will create this firewall rule above this implicit. It has to be above. If you move this below this, then everything will be denied. So this has to be above this implicit deny actually because it could be moved. You could move it up and down. So I would not want to do that. Want to make sure it's just above it. So this basically means any traffic coming from my LAN can go to my WAN. So any traffic from coming from anywhere, going to anywhere should be allowed. So these take precedence over this, and that will allow all my LAN traffic to actually go through the internet. So now if I have any device coming from this particular IP address and is trying to go to the internet, yes, it will be able to go to the internet through what's it called? Through my firewall, because my firewall will see it as something it can actually allow the traffic in. So this is the final thing you do. Once you do this, every traffic can actually then go straight to the internet. So basically, remember, one of the things you need to set is your interface. The next thing you need to set is your firewall policy. I talked about DNS earlier. Let's quickly go over the DNS. This is the default DNS is using. If you have a DNS that you want to use, if in case this response time is too high for you, you could as well specify any DNS that you want to use. If I say 8.8.8.8. Let's see the response time that will give us. Currently, that one was giving us 70 milliseconds. Let's see what we're going to get after applying this. So I'm waiting. Okay, currently this is 40 milliseconds. So basically, using this over the one that was there before is much more, even much more better because it has a faster response time. Whichever one, in your case, it might not be depending on your location, depending on other kind of things that are in place on your network. So, this is where you set your DNS if you have an internal DNS that you want to use. This is where you set your domain name. So let's say your domain name is whatever your domain name is, you just set your domain name. Let me let's say that's actually my domain name. Then you click apply. Whatever your domain name is, you had it there. If not, just leave it the way it is. So what I'm gonna do is um, yeah, I'm gonna actually gonna set my PC to have an IP address in this subnet and then open this page, and that will be the last thing for this basic tutorial on how to set up FortiGate on ESXi. Okay, one other thing I'm going to show you is since you're using an ESXi host, how do you identify which interface it is because you have so many interfaces that were being used. So what I'm going to do is click on the interface we want to identify, which is actually port 2, and then you will see the MAC address here. So this is the MAC address. So when you go to your ESXi host, you could actually expand each of this, and then that will tell you. Notice this is 8378. What I'm looking for is 8382. I'm basically looking at the last four. So here I'm going to expand the next one. Collapse this. So this is 8382. So this is basically on my Wi-Fi network. So basically, I have to set what's it called? Set my this network range on my Wi-Fi network. So I'm going to set this IP address on my Wi-Fi network and then one of this IP address range, and then I'm going to access this page. So I'm going to show you how to do that quickly. So here I'm going to open my network properties for my Wi-Fi. This is my wireless card properties. I could actually set this and then use the advanced to set the alternative IP address. But another way you could just use alternative configuration and then use the following IP address. This is my first time host. I'm actually using alternative configuration. I normally would just use the advanced option there. Let's continue with this 183 dots. Let's say 5. My default gateway would be the IP address of my firewall. 183.254 is my default gateway. I'm just going to use a single, oops, let's I'm going to use a single DNS IP address and click on OK. So basically what I have here, like I said, normally I would just go to advanced here, and this is where I would set it if I'm using a manual IP, but in the case here, I'm using alternate configuration. Let's see how that works. So the IP address has been set, so let's refresh this page. As you can see now, I can actually access it using that. One other thing I did need to make mention quickly was that I was having issue with the alternative IP configuration. So I did actually configure this using um, static IP address. I just put in my IP address that I have on my Wi-Fi interface. Then I went here and then I set by clicking add, I add the IP address, which is what I have here, and then I had the gateway here. So it's basically the same thing. So instead of using the alternate configuration, which really didn't want to work, so I just set the manual IP address and then had it here on the advanced. So that allows me to be able to use those two IP addresses. So I'm just going to close this. So basically, I can access my firewall using my LAN interface, and I can as well access my firewall using my WAN interface. So if I log in, you will basically see that it's basically the same firewall. So I'm going to log in now. Notice the name is the same thing, lab FGT Home Lab 6. So whether I'm accessing it using my LAN IP, I'm accessing using my WAN IP. So now I can actually disable on my WAN interface. I can actually disable access from my WAN. Let me show you how to do that. I can click here on the ISP interface, and then remove HTTP and HTTPS. I can still allow ping. I can allow SSH if I want, but let's remove all this and just allow only ping. So I'm click on OK. So what that does is that this is no longer going to be accessible. So if I click on interface, notice it's just rolling because basically I don't have any more access to this using the IP. So I've basically lost access. So I can enable that back from here by enabling all this. This is basically what I need. The HTTP is what I need, but you know me, I always like to have everything that I need as in ready. So notice this is failing now automatically. It just refreshed because now it could see that I've actually enabled those access. So you could do it on the CLI as well. Let's say um, let's disable this again. So I'm going to disable this for this interface. Notice if I refresh this, I've basically lost access. I can do it on the CLI. So I'm going to log in. Now config system interface edit. Don't forget that is port 1. Now notice currently I do not have access anymore. So this is my port 1. That's what I'm editing. So I'm going to say sets allow access. I'm going to allow it to be able to ping. I'm going to allow HTTPS, HTTP. I'm going to allow SSH. I'm going to allow FGM, FGFM. You can allow SNMP as well. So if I allow this and then hit the enter key, what happens is when I come back to this page and this page refreshes, what happens is that it will automatically open back. Yeah, ensure you type end, which will basically more like commit the changes. So now I have access back again. So if I go back to network interface, you can see that I have ping, HTTPS, SNMP, and two more, which is HTTP and FMG-access. So um, this is a very long video. I'm so sorry, but I hope this has been able to show you how you could actually set up um, your FortiGate on ESXi hosts, set up the interfaces both on the CLI or on the GUI, set up the static routes, set up the policy which is needed to actually transfer traffic. You can see that there is traffic here to transfer traffic from your LAN over to your WAN. Um, um, by ensuring that this deny all is not the only one that is there. So this allows you to transfer traffic outside of your network. You can actually also bring traffic into your network. To do that, if you want to bring traffic from your internet into your LAN, you could as well create that and say, I want to create traffic from ISP into my LAN, and then you can say source is the ISP, destination is your LAN. So any traffic coming from the internet, I would never advise this in a production environment, but whatever reason you want to do this, that's basically up to you. Um, Source basically going to say, okay, anywhere from the internet, I will not do this in a production environment. Trust me, this is a very, very bad idea. And then destination, I'm basically going to allow you to come into my LAN interface. So this is not going to go everywhere, but it's just going to go specifically into my LAN interface. That's actually my port 2 address here. As you can see, that's the address for my LAN, and that's my port 2 LAN. I'm going to allow all services to come in. In this case, I do not really need NATs, but you so just leave it for now, and then I can turn all this on. That will allow all the application to be filtered and so on like that. As we'll turn on the antivirus, you can as well edit this and tweak all this. That will be in that session as well, in that class and that training. So I'm going to click on OK, which will enable the policy. So this policy basically is saying any traffic coming from the internet to the LAN, as in as long as they're coming from internet to the LAN, you could actually move this up, you could move this down, whichever one you want to do, that's basically fine. So um, Please, if you have any question, please leave it in the comments section. Um, like I said, I would never do this in the production environment, so I can actually just disable that policy. It's scary. Um, you never can tell. You might have a reason to do that. There could be reason why you want traffic coming from the internet to come to your a specific LAN network or a specific VLAN in your network. Um, whatever reason that is, but that's basically how to set that up. Please subscribe. Thank you so much for viewing.